Wandell and the Pledge of Allegiance by Commissioner Anderson.
Guess I need to silence my phone. Let's go to Lord in prayer. Heavenly Father, it is again we thank you for this opportunity to come before you, and we ask for your guidance, your grace to help our county as we move forward conducting the county's business. We ask that you lead it and guide us in ways that are satisfactory to you, O Lord. And Lord, we also ask that you watch over those who are struggling at this time. We ask that you watch over Jay Yeager and his family as he deals with some personal issues with his family. And we have others immediately around us, Lord, that need those same prayers and your strength, Lord. And all these things we ask. Amen.
Amen.
Attention, salute, pledge. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. You know, the prayer is really important, and I appreciate that you do that, and that we have the opportunity to pray. You know, at this time, you know, during the resurrection, and we studied this in church, you know, 120 went in the upper room for 10 days, praying and fasting. Came out and preached for 3 minutes and saved 4,000 people. Prayer is remarkable.
It is.
And thank you, Commissioner Wandell.
Well, thank you for asking. Thank you.
All right. Next, we have the approval of agenda.
Mr. Chairman.
Commissioner Anderson.
I'd like to add under new business a brief discussion about the fire departments.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
could I add the private act for veteran service officer under new business?
Okay. Commissioner Wandell, you want to?
Yeah, I wanted to add the Waste Connections contract.
Okay. All right. Anything else? Have a motion approved as amended.
So moved. Second.
We have a motion second. Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimous. The elections administrator, Mark Stevens, couldn't make it tonight. He said if we had any questions to give him a call or email him, he'd be more than happy, but due to early voting starting on Wednesday, his time constraints just didn't allow it. So next week.
Mr. Chairman?
Go ahead.
Yeah, I understand Mr. Stevens couldn't make it, but I do have some questions that Commissioner Denenberg left. I'll email them to you, and I'd ask that those questions be added to the minutes of the commission operations meeting. We won't go over them since he's not here, not a sense the discussion. I talked to Commissioner Denenberg before she left the intergovernmental relations, and she said she'd like to have them added. And then I would like to, when Mr. Stevens has time, to bring this up again. I've been getting a lot of questions from folks asking about the election commission meetings and the minutes, and are they, you know, do they run by the Robert's Rules of Order, and, you know, a lot of questions on how those meetings take place and how the meetings seem to change dates and how the meetings seem to have action items that kind of change at the moment, and not a lot of input from the election, the people who vote. And I think that's a shame that a lot of folks don't get an opportunity to participate, understand what changes are being proposed, understand how it impacts them as they go to vote, especially with the upcoming May primary. We did get new voter registrations cards for new precincts. I think many of us have got a lot of those calls. We have 2 new voting precincts, and the reason I want to mention this, Mr. Chairman, because this is the only way our people can find out if they don't get it in the mail. So for us in District 1, we have a new voting precinct. It'll be Edgemore Baptist Church. That's going to replace the Bull Run precinct that was at the Optimist Club or Community Center in Claxton. And then they've added another one called Porch Manor off of Bluebird Lane out towards Mountain View area. That's a second that was added. So there'll be 3 voting precincts in District 1, those 2, and then, of course, Claxton Elementary School will still be there as well. But I encourage anyone that's got any questions, call your commissioners, call the election office, and they'll certainly answer the questions, but I'll pick that up later. So I'll make a motion to add these questions from Commissioner Denenberg. I'll email this to Mr. Chairman and send them to our Chief of Staff there in that. So I'll make that motion.
A motion second, discussion on the motion. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimous. And what we'll do is we'll try to get him to answer that. And if he can't make it to Monday's meeting, at least we can read the
Thank you.
answers.
Thank you.
Okay. Update on Planning Commission zoning regulations. When I seen it was going to be probably a light schedule, we done this a couple of years ago, but Harold Edwards, he's on the Planning Commission. Harold, if you don't care to come up. And he put together, and this is for the people at home, just to see how much that Anderson County is growing. And if anybody wants to see a copy, we've got some more up here.
Yes, I did. Great. First of all, thank you for inviting me to speak on behalf of the Anderson County Regional Planning Commission. I did want to bring you up to date. We are in the process of reviewing their current zoning resolution and providing some updates to that reflect what is going on in today's society. A few things that we're going to be addressing are agritourism, which was an item that was not considered back when the zoning resolution was created. We're also going to be addressing short-term rentals, which has been an issue. There are a few other things that we are addressing, mobile home parks being one. We have made provisions for campgrounds, which is a pretty significant economic development for our county here in the last 18 months or so. But Chairman Isbell asked me to give an update on the residential development that is occurring in Anderson County. So what I did was go back and get the building permits that were issued by Anderson County in the unincorporated areas. Also, I was able to pull information from Oak Ridge, the City View building site, and I only pulled the Anderson County building permits. Part of the permits were also in Roane County. And also Clinton. And if I may refer the handout to you, as you can see there, from June of 2021 through March of 2022 in Anderson County unincorporated, 78 new building permits for single-family residents and 64 mobile or modular home permits were issued, total of 142 new units, single-family residential. Also, we have 2 major subdivisions in the works in Anderson County proper. The Hollingsworth property out here off of Highway 61. We have, has received final approval at last month's Planning Commission meeting. There will be 126 single-family residential lots and 117 multifamily condo units have been approved for that site. And then the Longmire property, which is going out of Clinton up toward Rocky Top, has received preliminary approval for 152 single-family unit lots. So as you can see, there is opportunity for growth in Anderson County. A lot of people moving in. I think a lot of people want to move in. The limiting factor right now, as I see it, is a lack of infrastructure, utility infrastructure. And if Anderson County can maybe get some grants, work with Clinton Utility District perhaps, or some utility districts, and expand the water and sewer, we can really see an economic boom as far as housing. The key thing there, and my friend Rick Meredith will probably back me up on this, we get more rooftops in here in Anderson County, we're gonna have commercial development that's gonna follow. And that's gonna not only increase the tax base from property taxes, but also sales tax revenue base. I think that's the key factor in finding new revenue sources for the county. Do you have any questions on any of this, David? Yes.
Mr. Edwards, thank you, Mr. Chairman. On the Hollingsworth property, who is the actual developer now? I've had people ask, has it been sold, or is there a new group that's building it, or?
Actually, I can't really say. The person that has been, the spokesperson has been the surveyor for the property, Alex.
Oh, okay.
But I don't know exactly who the actual contractor is on the property. Do you, Rick?
Yes, it's D.R. Horton.
And they built across behind Walgreens. Okay,
Correct.
people have been asking, and I wasn't
It's
totally
only
sure.
the back part, not the front part.
Okay. Thank you.
I don't think the D.R. Horton person's been at the planning commission. So I didn't know that Alex McGrew has been the person that's presented the plans for approval, so. Is there anything else?
Mr. Chairman. The Longmire Road, is that in the city limits of Clinton?
It is not.
It's in the rural part of the county?
It's in the county. This is unincorporated area.
Okay. Is it gonna, they're gonna have to have access to sewer, right? That many homes on 85 acres?
I'm not sure where sewer close there. I believe it, they can tie into the sewer and extend it in there. So, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Then you're gonna do the city of Clinton?
Okay, City of Clinton, yes, I will. 36 single-family units, 1 duplex, 3 mobile homes, total of 41 units coming into the city of Clinton. Rocky Top and Norris were pretty negligible, 6 single-family units coming in there combined. Oak Ridge has 128 single-family units. I did not get a breakdown on number of units in the multifamily building permits issued, but there were 4 permits issued, and maybe Mr. Yeager can, do you recall?
Which property?
Well, there were 4 permits from June of last year until March of this year that were issued for multifamily.
Well, I think they call them the lofts, which is behind
The
the
lofts,
city county
yeah.
building.
I think that's one other permit because that permit was already issued, but they have decided to expand that. So I
Yes,
think
correct.
another permit was issued. I think that is one of them. I don't know how many units are in there though.
It's 2 in the new section. It's going to be 4 stories each, but that's
I don't
only
know
2.
how many units.
Units. I think it's another 100 or so.
Okay, it's pretty substantial.
Yeah, it is.
And that has filled up very quickly,
Yeah.
hasn't it? It filled up almost as soon as possible.
Their goal is to complete 1 building per month.
Okay.
So that's pretty.
And,
Aggressive,
and
yeah.
working with the City of Oak Ridge Community Development last summer, there's a strong emphasis on multifamily residential development in the downtown area. So, and there's a tremendous market for multifamily there in Oak Ridge. So total of 317 probably plus units that were permitted in Anderson County in the last 9 to 10 months. People are moving into this county, and the demand is there. So any questions, any further questions? Again, I want to thank you. We will be providing updates. I'm assuming that we're doing workshops every month with the Planning Commission right now on their zoning resolution. I'm assuming that probably by the late fall, we'll have something for County Commission to consider as far as updating their zoning resolution.
Thank you.
Sounds good. Thanks, Harold.
And that was just for this year, so the year before, we had substantial growth as well, and Commissioner Meredith can speak to, you know, the commercial growth. The Clinton exit is getting full, so,
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, there's more coming. We're working with 2 other developers, probably 400 more houses. It's confidential at the moment, but they're seriously looking.
okay.
So I thank Harold. I think our planning commission needs to be prepared. You know, Clinton's getting there, Oak Ridge is getting there, but it is coming.
It's coming, and it's needed, and, you know, for our growth, that's how we take care of things. Of course, you know, the schools are gonna have to expand, and there's some other things, but that, you know, that's a good thing, too. Yeah. Any other questions or comments?
When are those workshops, those monthly workshops, in case anyone at home wants to attend?
Yeah.
Our workshops have been the first Tuesday of each month.
Tomorrow
Planning
night.
Commission meets the second Tuesday of each month at 6:30. We did a workshop at the end of March, so we got a Planning Commission meeting next Tuesday. We're not meeting tomorrow night as a workshop. We
Oh.
had 2 weeks ago. But the second Tuesday of each month, 6 o'clock, we're doing our workshops.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Harold, I hear you're doing, and I appreciate this information, gonna be redoing the zoning, you say?
We are updating the zoning, yes.
In that process, will there be some effort to cleaning up blighted properties, junkyards, things of that nature?
You know, unfortunately, I don't think we have the authority under the enabling legislation to do that under zoning. Those properties, let's just take a non-conforming mobile home park, for example, unnamed, of course. That was created as a result of lack of planning, in my opinion. That property, the current use is grandfathered, though there may be some substandard lots in there, but there's no way that we can go back and close the door once the horse is out of the barn, so to speak. Unfortunate, but zoning, we can't go back and make it reactive.
Thank you.
Commissioner Mead?
Yeah, just a note there. Under the charter that's going to be presented to the people for possible acceptance, under the charter law, the county will have the authority to do ordinances. And they can specifically write ordinances involving property condition, blight, improper use of land, and then levy fines to get those things straightened out quickly. Right now, our only choice is to go into court and actually file lawsuits against people. And it's expensive, it's arduous, and the result is tenuous, I guess I would say. But under these ordinances, it's readily, other places have already done this. And it could work quite well. That was one of the benefits we could see if the people approve the coming charter. Very little else, there's not else changing. For the most part, the way we do business will stay exactly the same, except for this thing with ordinances. And that also allows us to adopt, for instance, the traffic code. And so if the sheriff's department writes a ticket, the ticket gets paid to the county instead of to the state. And some things like that. That's coming down the road as a maybe.
We should be ready for the voters this coming August. That's our goal.
Say again?
This coming August,
Yeah.
have it ready.
We're hoping August. It could end up being November, but the plan is August. We think we're going to get a better turnout in the August election than we actually will in November.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay. We'll move on. Welcome Center.
Good evening. I just wanted to come and give you all an update and maybe a little bit of new information. I think it was back in February, I came with a proposal that we auction off our Welcome Center and then use the proceeds to build a new center that would be a co-housed with the Anderson County Chamber and Anderson County Economic Development. And you all requested that I get a appraisal. In this market, those are hard to come by. And so we are in contact with a company that is going to provide an appraisal for us, and it's going to be about 4 to 6 weeks from this point on. So a couple of things that have happened. The original piece of property that we were looking at was sold. It's just how this market is. And so the chamber has entered into a contract on another piece of property. So Rick's here this evening. There was some things that I didn't feel like I was at liberty to say last time, but Rick can provide some information about their plans and where we are moving forward. So I'll turn it over to him.
Sure.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We have optioned the property right up the street across from Knight's Florist. It's a little over an acre. We did an option because we got some contingencies to work through. Obviously, one is the size of a building, whether you go up, down. So we optioned it. The lady that owns it was gracious enough to give us an option. In my preliminary meeting with the architect, it does look like it's going to work. So hopefully next month, we can come back before this body and move forward on the tourism piece of it to make sure we can do it. We want to be able to give the architect enough leeway to have tourism in the building, price it right. Obviously, the county would want to own their part, and all of those things can be worked out. So I just need to be able to give them a green flag moving forward next month. But it looks like it's going to happen.
Okay. Are you asking for any action? It's just an update, or?
We just wanted to provide you with an update, and I would love for y'all to maybe go ahead and authorize us to do it, but understand if y'all want to wait on the appraisal. But our intentions are whatever we make off the building to then turn around and invest that. So we're not going to be able to know what this new building is going to look like until we know what we're dealing with. So.
Okay.
Do we need to pass this?
Commissioner Yeager? Yeah, somebody have to make.
What's the size of your lot on
It's
your
almost a
current-
half an acre.
half acre? Okay, thanks.
Yes.
The lot you're on now?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. And when speaking to the appraiser, he basically said, are you wanting for the whole property, including the building? He said, because after he looked at it, he said, the property is what's going to bring the value, not the building. So.
Okay. Commissioner Meade?
Well, I just wondered if there's any action, in order not to hold things up when the time is right, do we need to move this on to operations just to add it to the agenda without a recommendation even? But,
You mean the full commission?
yeah,
Yeah. Okay.
and so I would think I'll make a motion to move this on without recommendation so it can be on the agenda for consideration by full commission.
Discussion at full commission.
Mr. Chairman?
Commissioner Wandell?
Go ahead.
Commissioner
We'll
McCann?
wait to see if we got a second on the motion.
Yeah.
Okay. I think referring it to next month, because she says it's going to be 4 to 6 weeks before the appraisal, and there's really nothing commission needs to act on, so there really wouldn't be a need. We could put it on next month's agenda for operations, and by that time, we might have that, and we may know for sure about the property, so.
So the part is, when you ask an architect to draw some, that costs money. So if tourism's going to be a part of the facility, I need to instruct them to draw that part and or not before we enter into the drawing and the contract with the architect. I would have to have approval tonight or next month because I don't want to hold them up. Does that make sense?
It makes sense, but if her appraisal don't come back to what it's gonna cost to build it, then
Right.
where do we stand from there? Are we committing money's, you know,
My suggestion would be is it still would have to come back. If you authorize it, it's still gonna come back here. Well, or to full commission,
so what are we authorizing?
that the sale of the property, the proceeds go to the construction of this building. If you wanna cap it, you can cap it. but
I think we've already done that.
No,
No, you just authorized me to get an appraisal. So I guess we're looking for a commitment, I guess would be the right word, to say that we are committed to doing this process. That the process of selling the building, designating the funds to be used. And there's a question out there with the auditors, because when we surplus a building, when we surplus any items, it stays within our fund. So we may be already, kind of following that avenue, is if we surplus the building, then the funds would come back into our fund anyway, because we are a separate fund. So we'd have to ask the auditors, but we're looking for a commitment to move forward. Because if it's something that commission's not interested in doing, then there's no reason for us to move forward. Then the chamber would just move on their own.
I would point out that my motion doesn't approve anything, other than that it be on the agenda so we can discuss it as necessary at the full commission meeting.
Commissioner Wandell?
Are we still discussing? I mean, I didn't want to make a second yet because I still got questions myself.
No, go ahead.
Yeah, the motion originally was to have an appraisal done. And I understand it won't be done for 4 to 6 weeks or what have you. I guess I question though, and and right now I'm in support of this idea. I guess I would kind of hesitate though that the property up there where you're at, the tourism, us, not you, but us, it was acquired by taxpayer dollars. So I see that as funds that would come back to, it may go into your fund,
Yeah.
but it's funds we expedited to purchase the property. So
It was, well, and just to clarify, it was tax dollars, it was hotel motel tax. So it wasn't, I just want to clarify that because we do have a lot of questions. People ask us, property taxes, sales taxes, what kind of tax is it? So it is hotel motel tax.
And you're correct, and I stand corrected. Hotel motel tax. But there was no hotel motel tax when we bought the property.
Yes, sir.
It wasn't that much, trust me. It was about 40 grand. It wasn't 200,000 or whatever we paid for the property. I remember, trust me. And you may have a better memory than me, but I can tell you the whole budget wasn't much more north than 100 grand at the time.
Yes. When I started, our budget was $90,000.
Okay,
Correct.
so therefore I'm correct. It wasn't more than 100 grand.
Well,
So I'm in
it's-
favor of this,
yeah.
but what I'm trying to understand is I don't want to put something on the agenda for Monday night for us to take action on when I don't, we're asking ourselves, let's vote on something that we think we're going to buy a piece of property here in Clinton. We're going to co-mingle 2 or 3 different entities, which probably is a good idea, but we don't know what the cost is.
Sure.
So what we're asking ourselves to do is to pony up whatever money might come in from a sale of that tourism property. And, I guess for me, I need to know what it's gonna be.
Okay.
And I hear what Commissioner Merritt is saying, the developer or planning or architecture, or whatever you wanna call them, has to know so they can have the cost and build it out right and spec it out or whatever, but I don't know, I just would need to know more information. I like the idea, but I still question who's gonna own what.
Sure.
I mean, how's that contract gonna be written? I mean, what happens if, 100 years from now, there is no tourism council, hypothetically, or the chamber doesn't exist? I don't know.
Sure.
I mean, what happens if there's a fight and the person in the chamber wants to own the whole thing and kick you out? I mean, I don't know. How's all that work?
And Rick and I have talked about all those scenarios, because we get along great, but
Yeah.
100 years from now, you don't know. And that's why the county will own our portion of the building. The chamber will not co-own that portion with us. They will own their portion, we will own our portion. It'll be deeded to the county. So if 10 years down the road, 2 years down the road, the chamber decides they don't want to live there anymore, then they sell their part and they're gone. If there's some other things that, stipulations, then we can discuss those, but that's kind of, when I went into this, when we started talking about this, I said, we own property now. And I spent the first 10 years of my tenure at the tourism paying the county back, paying the loan basically for that building. And I'm not interested in going in debt. I'm not interested in owing, that's why I said whatever we receive off of the sale of the building, that is what we'll invest in a new property. Not a dime more, not a dime less. So there may be some other funds used for furniture, fixtures, and that's why we put some money back. But I'm not interested in going and back in debt or putting the county in any kind of, debt situation. So
We are going from what I call, in my mind, the entrance to Anderson County, unless you're coming in from the west, Oak Ridge, or from Clinton Highway. To me, that's kind of the new end of our county, the welcome, and you're going to be moving from there to a location next to the railroad tracks. And I just wonder how it doesn't seem like it's a spot
sure.
that
Well,
let me put it this
yeah.
way. In my opinion, you probably wouldn't go pick that spot if we said, hey, Stephanie, we got 500,000. We want you to go pick a spot. I would venture to say 99% out of 100, you would not pick that spot.
No, and unfortunately, that is what we wouldn't, I think the spot is fine. It would not be the most desirable spot. I would love to be on the waterfront. But there is a Magnet Mills building sitting there right now that is, the price goes up on it every day.
But if you went across the river to the other property, that I think it might work over there.
Well, and one of the things that we were looking at is the downtown area, trying to stay within that downtown area. And in '98, when the facility was built, it was the perfect location because people would come off the interstate, they'd stop, they'd ask for information, and they'd get back in their car and go on. Today, they're driving down the interstate with a supercomputer in their hand. They have a map, they have a brochure, they have it all right there in their hand. And, like I said last time, we get more requests on where can I host a registration? Where can I have a small event? Where can I, get information about moving to the area? More so than we get about visiting to the area. All the people that are asking us about visiting the area are calling ahead of time. And they're contacting us through Facebook and through our email, and, other social media. So our purpose has changed. The world has changed. Who would have thought, something like Facebook would have existed 20 years ago. So I think that, moving forward, we need to adapt and we need to change. And I think there is some advantage to being in that downtown area and being in a central part of the county versus, on one end or the other. So.
To expedite this along, Mr. Chairman, and again, I know other members may have questions or comments, but maybe we can make a contingent motion, make it contingent on the return of the appraisal that will come back to this body for final approval, if you will. But in theory, maybe I would make a motion contingent upon that appraisal to move forward as requested by the tourism director.
Great.
Does that sound reasonable to Steve? Are you okay with that?
We can do the same thing with the 2/3 majority vote and add it to the agenda next week if we want to. I just thought it was smart to say, hey, look, we don't have enough information right now to make any decisions to do anything, really, I don't think. But I think by next week, we might be in a position to know more about exactly if there's some specific things that have to go on a shorter notice, that we can know about that. It can be explained at the meeting, and we can make a decision to do something or not do anything until next month. And they already told us it's gonna be 4 to 6 weeks, it's not gonna be before the next meeting that we have all that, but it sounded like there were some other things about getting this, the estimates for what the building's gonna cost at the new location, that we really can't do anything until we commit, at least enough to say, we'll pay for having that looked at.
Well, and is that your intention of your motion to say, we're gonna commit enough to look at and say we're in, until we get more hard numbers and bring those back to you?
Go ahead, Commissioner
Thank you,
Meade.
Mr. Chairman. Let me clarify some confusion. I think, Commissioner Meade, we are on the agenda, so passing it out of this body tonight would take it to full commission. But to Commissioner Wandell's issue, one of the contingencies in the option, Commissioner Wandell, is whether we can do what they call zero lot line or condo, the tourism part, so it belongs to the county. That is one of the conditions in the contract. And our architects are looking at that, how you turn it, where you have ingress, egress, all of those.
Inadequate parking.
Yeah, adequate parking. All of that is currently being decided. But then when you get into so there's the shell of the building, but then it's, well, where's the office, where's this, what's actually gonna be the functional parts, that's the next step. But for this body, I think the first step, to your point, is, if you're good with the idea, let's see if we can zero lot line it. The county can actually own this with parking with ingress egress. That's the biggest question for tourism. And if not, we either got to move on or whatever. But I don't want commission holding up what we're trying to accomplish, and then we can show you a schematic and show you the full drawings at the particular time, contingent upon that appraisal and funding. I think that's where I'm trying to get. I don't want to hold the architects up. The first step is, will it work? Can it be zero lot line? Can it be condo? Because if the county, I can't speak for 16 commissioners, but I assume the county would want to own their portion of it, would be my thoughts. That's why we went that route. So that has to be determined first. I just don't, so we can do it tonight, or we definitely got to do it in May.
So it's going to be the tourism and the chamber
And a CETA.
and a seat. I think we still have a motion on the floor unless it
We don't have
died.
a second, so we're just having a discussion.
I just want to be respectful of Commissioner Meade. I know he made the motion. I don't, I'm prepared to make a contingency motion, but it'll be up to Commissioner Meade.
Well, Commissioner Anderson's the one to speak, so let's figure we'd let everybody speak,
Sure.
then probably draft a motion out of that, if need be.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I was just curious, is there any ballpark numbers at all of how much you're gonna need to buy in? Like how much you're hoping it's gonna appraise for?
I have my hope for number, kind of based on what some of the other property up there has sold for. Just ballpark, it could be anywhere, honestly.
The average cost is about $350,000 to $400,000 an acre. If you look at the properties around her, I'm talking about just the land.
Right.
That's the ballpark you're in land-wise.
So is there in your head, if the appraisal comes back for X dollars, you'll feel comfortable going, or if it comes back for a certain amount, you're gonna have to back out? Like, do you have that? Because I guess that's part of what the hesitation is.
Yes. I think that would be a conversation with the architects too. For example, I'm just throwing numbers out there. If the property sells for $500,000 and we're able to get something that we desire, with the space that we need and additional space, because we need more space than we have now. So if we're able to get that, then we would move forward. But if not, then we'll stay where we're at.
So there's no plan at all to come back to commission and say we need $200,000 more
No.
to go with it?
No, sir.
Okay.
No,
Yeah.
we will
I think-
use our fund balance before we come back. And it's not my intentions, like I said, to go into debt or to overextend ourselves. I've been very conservative with our funds for the last 21 years, and I don't plan on changing that now. Just ask my husband. He has a budget, so, and he doesn't get more than his budget. He would not appreciate me saying that, but I have been very conservative with our funds, and I plan on continuing to be so.
Commissioner McCamey?
Rick, if tourism didn't move, is it your plan and ACETA to go ahead without tourism?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
And when they do the appraisal, they'll do the building separate and the property, or will it all
Yes,
just be
yes.
total in case somebody wanted to buy the building?
Well, we would sell it whole. We would sell it all together. We would not try to sell the building and then come back and try to sell the property. So it would be, I mean, that's my intentions. It would be the owner's responsibility if they don't want the building, because I see that there's value in that building. So I'm not gonna say, oh, you just want the property, well, then pay for the property. So, because there is value in that building.
Just curious, if we did go to sell it, how would we sell it?
Auction.
With a minimum?
Yes, sir.
So what's the motion on the floor?
Motion on the floor, well, really, we don't have a motion because we don't have a second.
Oh, okay.
But the discussion is to send it to full commission for further discussion without recommendation.
Which the chair can do anyhow, because it was discussed in this meeting. That's fine with me.
Okay, going to, the motion was to go to full commission without a recommendation for discussion only.
Just like what we're doing now, open discussion.
Is that good enough for
Which can be
you?
done without the motion.
Well, I don't ever want to tell my colleagues how to vote, but I think we all know if you send it without a recommendation, you're really not helping our cause. And we're gonna have to go through this process to full commission. You know, if it's got a contingency in it, the commission has an out, really have two outs. So that's what I think. And again, this doesn't have to be done this evening. We can do it in May.
Well, I think our original motion out of this committee to the full commission was to endorse the concept.
Which one? Which motion?
The original motion that.
With the appraisal? Oh,
Yeah, when we did the appraisal.
I think it was just to get the appraisal, then bring it back to this committee.
I
If
think that,
Yeah.
I think that motion
said we can wait till May.
also said that we endorsed the ideal. And I'd be glad to make that motion again if we need to, that we endorse the plan. And would that be good enough for you to go ahead with the architects?
It will, but we'll be coming back.
Yeah.
I think I would feel more comfortable if, I mean, I know everybody's kind of shaking their head, but,
So-
I mean, until a motion is made and a vote is taken, then I don't have any authorization to move forward, so.
You all put my reputation on. I'm not gonna let y'all fund something and not see what you're funding.
Yeah,
Right.
You know,
absolutely.
you're gonna get to see it in full detail.
Well, Mr. Chairman, I make that motion that we endorse the ideal and forward that to full county commission with a recommendation for approval.
Okay. Commissioner Anderson still needs to speak. I don't know if we got
No,
a second on
that's
this.
good.
You got a second?
I'm good.
I second.
Okay, got a motion and a second. Any discussions? Everybody understand what this is?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I can't support that motion. That's locking us in. If we sell that property for $1, I doubt very seriously they're gonna let tourism move in for $1 at the new facility. So, I couldn't, I was more comfortable supporting it with a contingency on the appraisal coming back, which was the original motion we asked for. I'm sorry that there's nobody around to give us an appraisal for whatever reason. Seems like we could get one, but I'm not an appraiser, so I wouldn't know. All I can do is go off what's been said. They're busy and they can't do it. So if they're busy and can't do it in the last 30, 45 days. So I guess they'll still be busy the next 45 days. And I sure don't want to commit myself to something if I'm not going to support, we're going to do it. I'll support, we'll do it with a contingency once the appraisal comes back, and then we get the numbers in front of us and say, well, the building's going to cost 2.7 or 1.2 million dollars, and here's Anderson County tourism section, here's the CETA section, here's the chamber section, and this is what it looks like. Here's how many parking spots, here's how many square feet, and I'll be prepared to spend the money then. But I can't support the motion as it's presented. There's too many unknowns for me.
Do you think you'll have something more in May?
I hope to. I mean, I hope that we'll have an appraisal back by then. But I mean, honestly, I couldn't even get 2 people to call me back. And I left several messages, sent emails, and one of them is, very well known in this town. And they're just covered up. I mean, they are just covered up. I think, and I want to be respectful, respect what you're saying. And I could stand here and say it's what my intentions are, but I mean, I think if you feel more comfortable making that as a, maybe an amendment to the motion, but we're not gonna move, I don't know, I don't wanna put words in anybody's mouth, but I didn't take what you all were saying to me tonight as we're ready to go to auction. I'm not ready to go to auction. I'm waiting on an appraisal. I will come back with you with that appraisal. We'll tell you what the plan is. We've talked with Jay. He's explained the process to us with the auction and the purchasing agent. So I don't take this motion as you authorizing me to go sell the building tomorrow. So if you're more comfortable waiting to May, we can do that. If you want to make it an amendment to Commissioner McCamey's motion, then that's, fine too. My main goal here is just to get a commitment from county commission so that we can meet with the architects, get the plans together, not a commitment to sell, but just like Robert said, we endorse the idea. We're not endorsing the sale at this point. I think that Jay would tell you, you'd have to have that as a stated motion, that you are surplusing the property and selling it. So, that's, we can define this in different ways, but it is not my intentions to go out this door and list that property for sale based on this motion.
Commissioner Meade?
I have a very important question that's going to be critical to how we go ahead here now. If you get to a point where you're going to auction, you set the minimum bid that you're going to accept.
Mm-hmm.
Is that number going to be high enough to ensure you can go ahead with this plan?
Yes.
Okay, see, that's a big deal. There was a comment made about what if it sells for a penny or some minimal amount.
There's a dollar.
But you set the,
Yes.
you set a minimum that allows you to go ahead, and if it doesn't sell for that much, then you stay where you are.
Right, and bids will not be accepted under that. That's how the bid process works.
Okay, I don't think that was understood by everybody, and I
Sure.
wasn't sure until I just asked.
Sure. So, I mean, again, I don't want to confuse the subject. But again, like I said, I mean, just head nods that everybody seems to be okay with it. I don't feel comfortable with that being enough for me to move forward. I would like,
And it would be
something.
difficult for a contractor that's even you're talking to feel like they want to go ahead if they don't feel that the commission is supportive.
Sure.
That's correct.
I have a
Another
quick
thing.
question.
Commissioner Scott?
How long have you been at this location?
1998.
And what's the square footage?
We looked at this the other day. I'm wanting to say it's 1,800 square foot.
And it's close to the interstate. Do you get foot traffic?
We get some. It's decreased a lot over the years, especially after COVID. So we have not come back to pre-COVID numbers at all.
Well, people haven't traveled like they did.
Well, and when they do, they just don't get out of their cars very much and venture in, to places that unless it's necessary. So. And, I mean, when we first started in 98, I think there was the Get and Go and the Exxon. And, you know, a few hotels and you know, there's not the restaurants that there are now. There's just not the other amenities. If you have the choice to stop at a gas station, use the restroom and get some snacks and get back on the road, that's usually, you know, what we see. Our number one question is a map from the older population, more mature population. And then we get a lot of questions on, we've had people bring in their GPS and have us reprogram it. So, and then we get a lot of questions about moving to the area. They've just moved to the area, they want to know more, that kind of thing.
You've just got the one location.
Yes, ma'am.
Have you considered having more than one location?
Not at this time, no, I haven't.
And I'm asking that because of the traffic that we get in Oak Ridge that goes to Windrock, the people that come out to do the rowing.
Sure.
I mean, we've got a lot to offer
Well,
in
and
the
I mean,
city of
Explore
Oak
Oak Ridge
Ridge.
has their welcome center, and it's housed with the chamber in Oak Ridge.
Right.
So they see a lot of that traffic too.
But that's focused on the city of Oak Ridge. It's not focused on,
Oh, no, it is. They have our brochure, they have our information, they have Windrock's information. Yeah, I think the hotels in Oak Ridge would tell you they could not survive on the city traffic alone. They pull in people from Windrock, Brushy Mountain.
oh, of course, of course.
Absolutely.
But that's why I'm asking if you would consider having more than one location. My concern is that you're going from the interstate, which I understand,
Sure.
but to tuck it downtown in Clinton, now they have to come and find you. And if you had more than one location that was on a major thoroughfare, coming from different areas of the county, as opposed to, as an example, me being in Oak Ridge to say, sure, we've got, you know, a location that you can go to. Pop this into your GPS. And you're gonna have to drive down this road, go down this part of the interstate, hook a left here, go downtown, et cetera, et cetera. That's my concern. You know, that you're putting a lot of money to go from primarily where you are to sharing a building with someone else. But you said you can wait until May, correct? Okay. That's all I have.
Commissioner Meredith.
Mr. Chairman, I know there's a motion on the floor. Would it help everybody if Stephanie and I just did a proposal at the next operations committee, and hopefully Jay can be in a better position?
It would be, because
Better position to explain everything he explained to us,
Yeah.
to you guys.
Because I'm sitting here and this is an election season and we're confusing
That
the
was my
public.
original
You're
motion.
confusing me.
So, you know, I think that person.
And I'm not the makers of the motion. That's
Yeah.
up to you all, but that
I'll
might be a
withdraw
little
my
bit-
motion, Mr. Chairman.
Okay.
Same.
And the second.
Motion withdrawn, and we're going to see something in May. Yes. Is that correct? Everybody, Commissioner?
Yeah, I like that idea, and I apologize. I appreciate the discussion, because I want to see it happen.
Sure.
But I think Commissioner Scott brought up a good point, and I'm not trying to change your way of thinking, but maybe you keep the location out there by the interstate, and you get additional space you need, meeting rooms, what have you, in the new location. It might be another option to consider. And then, you know, I'd be prepared to take the money out of undesignated fund balance to make that happen, so you don't have to use your hotel tax dollars, you know? So that's just me. I'm not speaking for
Yeah.
everybody else, and I'd
Yeah.
spend more than $1, so, thank you.
Okay. Any other discussion?
They'll be on the agenda next month.
And if you
right?
have any questions, please call me. I mean, I'll be happy to discuss it with you. And if you can think of anything that you would like for us to be sure to include next month, please just send me an email.
What do we pay for that property? Wasn't it like 197,000 or something, 160?
No, no. And there was actually, this has been a question too, it might come up again. Within the first 10 years, there was a reversion clause to the hotel owner that was behind us. He sold us the property. And in the first 10 years, if we sold it, he would have had first right of refusal. That ran out in 10 years.
I got you.
The first 10 years, so,
Thank
in
you.
case that comes up.
Be better if I deferred it.
Yes.
A motion to defer this to next month's meeting.
Okay. Got a motion, we have a second?
Second.
Sure.
Got a motion, a bunch of seconds. Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimous. And this was all good discussion.
Yeah.
You know, we're supposed to do it
Yeah,
committee.
I mean, I want you all to be comfortable with this. So,
Yeah.
I mean, we talked about it for several months or several years, actually. So we want you to be comfortable and feel comfortable making this decision, so.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, under new business, first is fire department.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. A couple weeks ago, I know we had several wildfires kind of all across the county. 130 acres burned in my district around Mount Olive community. That was kind of I know there was a fire in Marlow. I really focused more on what was going on around Andersonville and Mount Olive, but there were Oak Ridge engines that came up to help. It was really a county-wide effort. I wanted to highlight that. Mutual aid work, everybody helped everybody. Talked with the chief at Andersonville some, and people, the community really came out to donate bottled water, snacks, everything they were asking for. And there's pizzas, there's stuff that you don't really think about, like the wet wipes and eye drops and stuff. I never considered that, but that's critical when you're exposed to that much heat. And she's still calculating what it cost them just to fight that fire, but it's thousands of dollars just to that one department. But out of 130 acres, there were no structures lost. So really, had they not, I mean, they were the line of defense for the county. They saved us potentially millions in damage. The wind was horrible that day, if you remember, and if they hadn't have been there, it could really went in a way more tragic direction. So, and I don't know if I need to make a motion or refer this to Budget Committee, but the $27,500 that we give each department has not changed for quite a few years. And I don't know if they want to I know they're getting close to being done with the budget, but if they want to consider some type of inflation adjustment or even a one-time bonus payment to all the departments, because they were all active that night. And that massive 130 acre wildfire for Anderson County is that's a pretty large fire. I don't know if even like a $5,000 extra per department this year, a one-time payment, if that's something that budget could take into consideration. But I just kind of wanted to highlight some of what they went through a few weeks ago.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Talk about that.
What would we do if we didn't have our volunteer fire departments? And I think some of the other commissioners, and we talked to Chairman Val of the Fire Commission, we talked about going ahead and doing something because of the increase in fuel. Because, diesel is just out of sight right now, and it's by the time you take your truck over to Knoxville to get it pump tested and back, you're a couple $100. So I would definitely support something like this to help the fire departments out.
Well, I'll make the motion then, I guess, to refer to Budget Committee to consider some type of either a stipend or even just a one-time stipend to help all the departments, because I know the cities were active that night too. They really came out to help, and they pay county taxes too, so I want to make sure it's across the board and fair. But yeah, I'd like to make the motion to refer to Budget Committee to consider a one-time increase of $5,000 per department to the.
We got a second by Commissioner Merritt.
So is the intent of this is basically to help them recover from responding to a 130 acre wildfire?
Well, yeah, and that wasn't the only wildfire that night. There
No,
was the
we
one
had
in
one.
Marlow, but
Had
yeah,
one down
I'm sure
Marlow, too.
every department probably spent $2,000 or $3,000 on fuel and wear and tear and equipment alone on that, just that one night. And that wasn't even the only fire in Andersonville's AVFD's district that night. They had a structure fire unrelated elsewhere, but, yeah.
Any other discussion? And then that amount can be changed higher if full commissioner budget comes up with, better number. Because I think he was gonna get with fire commission and see about how much they thought that they'd spent, actually.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I appreciate Chairman Anderson bringing this up. I support it wholeheartedly. I listen to that radio go off a lot, and my wife was out till 5 in the morning the same day. There's fires everywhere, Claxton and Andersonville, and it was a bad night, and I don't know how these volunteers do it, but they are absolute heroes.
Yeah.
Because not only did they get done working and volunteering, again, not getting paid, they get up, they don't even get up, they put their other shoes on and then go to work.
Not
And
even have time to take a shower.
Yeah, and it just really is kind of humbling to know that all of these folks are in our county and just do it because they want to make sure everyone's safe. It's just, so I'll support this, and I'd even support more than that, but certainly the 5,000. And I hope it's something we look at with the ARP funds when we get down the road. Thank you.
Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimous. Next is the private act.
Yeah, we, Commissioner Wandale and I serve on the Veterans Advisory Committee, and we were discussing some things about how it got started and, where it had come from, where it is now. And during that, we found out that there's a private act that Anderson County has we're not in compliance with that private act back in 1947, I think. And what I'd like to do here tonight is to ask the county law director to draw up a whatever we need to send to Nashville to rescind that private act, because the way we're operating now is much better than we could under the private act. But it's an old private act that we didn't even know was on the books when we formed the full-time veteran service officer. So I'd like to make that motion to the full commission and ask that it be rescinded and do it with recommendations for approval.
A motion by Commissioner McCamey, seconded by Commissioner Wandale.
Yeah, and I'll also point out that the state law on the veteran service officers and stuff has become much more complete, and that's really what we're doing now, and the private act has really been overcome by history. And so, but also, and I hate to bring this up again, but if we adopt the new charter, there will be a list. You're allowed to put a list of the private acts that stay in place. If it's not on that list, it goes away as part of that process. And so that's another way it could be handled in the very near future.
Mr. Chairman, I would like to say that normally we'd have more discussion on it, but it is sort of time sensitive. If we can get it down there before the second week in May, it can be done this year. If not, we're going to have to wait until next January when they go back in session.
So what we're asking is for the law director to have something for Monday night?
Yes.
And this is to make us kind of go away from that, under that state private act.
Yes.
And then Jay will follow up with some bylaws, I assume, for
Well,
us.
we're under state law right now. So this just puts us under the state law rather than the private act that was established back in
I got you.
1947.
So we're just doing away with the private act.
Okay, okay.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you.
It just repealed the private act.
Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimous. Commissioner Wandale, Waste Connection?
Mr. Chairman, I know we all may not have the information, and was invited to the solid waste meeting. Chairman McCamey, I was out of town on business and I didn't get to make the meeting, but I did get the agreement, and I got a lot of questions on it, and maybe tonight's not the night to address them all, but, you know, I guess some of the things that kind of concern me is the minutes that are referred to in this amendment for the Waste Connections contract. The minutes they're from 2019. They're not even the last minutes of the last meeting. So, you know, the way the contract's presented, it looks as if we're making an amendment to extend it, but it's based off the minutes that are presented from 2019. So I don't think that's probably, maybe they put the wrong minutes in or something. But other things with that contract that kind of caught my attention is we as a body, purchasing, or the county commission has the opportunity to extend it for 5 years, 3 times, but it must be at the same rates. That's what it says in the contract. And we're not kind of adhering to that. It looked like to me we approved that Waste Connections contract in 2015. And here we are in 2020. I don't think we ever did the 5-year extension from 2015. So, and I understand no one wants to bid it, apparently, but I guess my questions are, what's the process for that contract?
Is that waste management?
No, this is Waste Connections. I'll send you an email to you to share with everybody. I don't think everybody got this, and again, I added it.
It was in purchasing, if you haven't seen it.
Yeah. Okay, so it's in purchasing? It's in purchasing now?
It was heard in purchasing
Okay.
at 4:30.
Oh, today?
Yes.
I've got a copy for you.
Well, and maybe that's the process, and maybe Chairman McCamey can educate me, but I just want to kind of follow along with this and, you know, see what the process is. Ever since I've been on commissions, 2006, it seems like the Waste Connections contract and the waste management contract kind of gets passed without much exploration by this body. When I mean this body, I'm talking about all 16 commissioners. And I think this is an area we should focus on. 1, with our landfill. 2, with the hauling of our trash and recyclables, because I get too many stories of recyclables being taken to the landfill. And when the people in our county go take their recyclables to recycle and they go to landfill, then we have to pay for them to be dumped into the landfill. It doesn't seem to make a whole lot of sense. So, you know, I think it deserves more discussion, and I'd like to maybe come to the next solid waste. Has there been a decision to move forward, or where is it at with this extension or amendment?
Well, the only thing that we approved today was, what they're doing is going from, their hours from 8 to 6 and then up to $15 an hour. That's the only thing we took up today.
Who pays for the $15?
That's Waste Connections.
They're paying that, or is it
Yeah,
county?
they're paying that, but we'll have to reimburse that because they went ahead and went up, and that's part of it.
And I don't have a problem. I think the people working there definitely need a pay increase. I think they're making a lot less. $8.50 an hour. That's unacceptable. But I guess another question I have, and I apologize if I'd have known. I didn't know this was going to be on purchasing tonight. I'd have tried to make the meeting. It's just a lot of moving parts I'd like to kind of set in on, and I guess one of the big other questions I have is I hear the new hours, but the issue I have is what happens when they're shut down? What happens when, you know, commissioners get the calls and say, well, the center's closed, they don't have a truck, or it's full, or, you know, I mean, do we have a provision in the contract when those times happen that we get compensated? I think we should. You know, we should get some type of compensation for when those times happen. I understand if there's no trucks or, it happens, but our people shouldn't get penalized because they couldn't make that happen. And, I'd love to see it operate during these hours, and when we get the new one over there in District 1, maybe that'll help out. But, so what's the next step on, since it went to purchasing today, what's the next step?
It'll have to be approved. What we sent from finance today with a recommendation will be taken up in full commission Monday.
I would just encourage all my fellow colleagues, commissioners, to look at this agreement.
This
I-
is an extra.
I guess the question is, what's the danger in putting it out for bids?
Well, one thing that we need to consider closely putting up for bids now is the escalation in inflation. I think Oak Ridge did that, and they ended up paying 3 times what the contract was originally. And that was just because of inflation. But we'd want to look at it carefully, because I don't know, without looking at that contract, I don't know what they've agreed to. I don't know what's open end, or, if they've got a clause in there for the increase of fuel or anything like that, so.
I didn't see one for fuel. It may be in there, but I did see the clause that said it's renewable for 3 5-year terms, but it must be at the same price. And it doesn't sound like to me we're at the same price. So to me, it wouldn't qualify as an addendum to the contract.
Yeah.
Mr. Chairman, the biggest problem with that, putting it out for bid, is we only have the one bid. We tried to bid it 2 years ago, 2019. That's why we're going to extend it, the present bid, because we couldn't find anybody else that was willing to bid on it. The problem is the trucks that transport belong to Waste Connections. The compactors at all the centers belongs to Waste Connections. If somebody else wants to bid, they're going to have to go in and purchase all this equipment, and they don't know that they want to do it for a 5-year term. Can they recoup their money in 5 years if we decide to go with somebody else 5 years later? And that's why we've kept extending this one, because we can't find anybody else except Waste Connection that wants to bid on it. There is one other option, and that is that the county purchase trucks and use county employees and let the solid waste department operate. I think Campbell County does that, don't they?
That's what they're doing now. We work with them on, they got all new compactors and set up all these sites, and they're doing it all themselves now.
And that's an option, but it would take an initial investment on the county that we'd have to go, either with bond issue, or maybe we could use some ARP money, but that is an option that we could look at. Be glad to look at it.
Yeah, we definitely see how Campbell County's working out.
So when you put it out for bids, does procurement, purchasing actually contact the other companies?
Yeah, well, they put it on their website or whatever it is that, for vendors. And
But it sounds like to me there, Robert, it goes out on our website, and we hope that they notice it.
No, they do send it out.
They send it to those other vendors.
yeah,
So Griffin, Waste Connect, Dependable Waste, whoever, they send the bid out to all those entities.
I think they do.
Whether they request it or not, I believe.
yeah.
All known vendors, plus it's on as a reactive basis too.
I mean, it goes out on that one site, and people can bid from South Carolina, Georgia, whatever.
Well,
But
I
there's
don't,
two firms around here that we contacted, one being Waste Management, who originally had the contract. Waste Connection came in and underbid them, and the contract went to them. But Waste Management told us 2 years ago, when we were talking about rebidding, if they weren't interested in bidding, they would not submit a bid. Company down in Loudoun County talked like they might, but then when it come right down to it, they said, no, we're not gonna bid. So we were stuck with the one, and it was either extend that or put it out for bid. And if we put it out for bid, and them knowing they're the only sole source that's gonna bid, you know, it just, the sky's the limit for them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, like the power attorneys that are in this agreement are from 2014. There's two entities from California. I don't know if they're still alive. I don't know if those power attorneys are still good. I mean, there's a lot of questions on this, and I just would like for us to make sure, and if it stays Waste Connection, hey, that's great. I just want to make sure that when we enter the contract, that all the things that are in the contract are still binding and legal. I don't know. I mean, all this stuff goes back to 2014, so I guess we can assume all of those power of attorneys and bonds are all still good, but I don't know who does that in the county for us to make sure that that's still tangible,
It goes through
equitable.
purchasing. I mean, they would have to be the ones to verify everything in there.
And it has to be approved by the law director.
Well, I apologize for adding it, but I appreciate the discussion. I'll just go find out what the next step is. So the next step on this is to take it to commission?
Full commission, that's just on these two items right here, on the, just on the Second Amendment to the contract. But we can definitely, you know, send it back to operations and.
Yeah, I mean, in the agreement that I received, I mean, there's line strikes and old contract numbers stricken and inserted in writing, the new contract amendment.
Oh, I see what you're saying, yeah.
I mean, I have trouble with us entering a new agreement based on an agreement that was done in 2014 and not knowing if all of the particulars to that agreement are still active for 2022. That's, I guess, where I'm at.
If I'm not mistaken, and I might be, aren't we under a renewable until 2025 with them? Isn't that what was said in purchasing? Or do you remember that, Tim?
Yeah, to June 30 of 2025.
I think it's a dangerous time to rebid. I'd like to make sure, I'd like to live with what we have because of the rebidding prices. So I think you're right with making sure that we understand everything we have.
I guess my question is, I don't see where we ever rebid it. It was executed in 2015. I mean, it can go out to 2030 if you extend it. If we extended it every 5 years, I don't know that we have extended it since 2015.
I think what Robbie was saying today, that it's been extended to, somehow, to June 30th of 2025.
Right, that's what I understand too. Commissioner McCamey, do you have any more insight on this part?
No, one of the problems that we came up with, and the reason for that, the hourly change, was because of the Fair Labor Standards Act. The employees were working 32 hours, or 33 hours. They were working 3 11-hour shifts. In order for the company would have to pay insurance for them, and it was something like $35,000 a year per employee. And in order to keep from us having to, you know, reimburse them for that, the Solid Waste Board requested that we cut back to 30 hours, 10-hour days instead of 3 11-hour days. Make it 3 10-hour days, and that keeps them at part-time employees, and they don't have to pay that. And the other was that, you know, the other problem was they're going from $8.50 an hour to $15 an hour. And I'm surprised they got people that'll do it for $15 an hour on a part-time basis. But that was one of the problems that they said, you know, we're going to have this. We're going to have to be reimbursed for this or change those hours. So that's why we came up with that 10-hour workday.
You know, of course, one of my things always been about keeping the pressure turned up on the compactors, and I don't see that happening a lot when I make my visits, but, and that's part of the contract. So I understand, you know, your concerns with, you know, who's checking to make sure that everything's been done as the way it's contracted. So I guess what we'd do is, you know, refer questions to the solid waste committee to be answered, or?
Yeah, because this, I mean, if I'm understanding it correctly, this would be on our agenda Monday, typically. Is that right?
That's correct.
So you know, this is, it says here, Waste Connections' second amendment to contract number 15-0169-A2, amended wages and hours of operations. One would think that is only for the wages and the hours of operations, but my question is the contract 15-0169 still in effect? And did we ever bump it up? So if this comes up in the meeting Monday, I'll not vote for it. I'll speak against it, just because I'm not going to vote for a contract that I don't even know if the folks that guarantee it in the contract are still in existence, and if the power of attorneys are still the same, and all the other fun facts that I think should be addressed. So I would almost want to defer that whole thing back to procurement, purchasing, and have them relook at it and give us their feedback. Maybe they can do that before the meeting, I don't know.
We've got a meeting scheduled for the 19th, but that's the day after the commission meets.
My thought would be everybody who would have those answers would be in the room on commission night, which would be helpful than having to do it without anybody who knows all the details, like the mayor and finance director. So it'd be nice to have everybody in the room. That's the issue, I think.
Yep.
We're just guessing on a
Yeah,
lot of stuff.
I agree.
We tried to ask all the pertinent questions, so we'd be more prepared for this meeting. But, I think, you know, the finance director seems to know pretty much about the contract, and the mayor.
Is there any way to get a representative from Waste Connections at the meeting? Because I have a couple questions just about the operations at Glen Alpine. While we're looking at it, it would be nice to have someone from the company.
We can try to get somebody here. I'll work on it tomorrow.
That's a good idea.
Yeah.
There is one, yes.
Okay, so what's the pleasure of the commission or this panel? Just further discussion Monday night, and then we've asked the chairman of the Solid Waste Committee to have someone from Waste Connections
Yep.
to come to our next Operations Committee meeting. Okay, is that a motion?
Well, yeah, and really what we want to do is we have to answer some questions that have been brought up. Is the contract been extended lawfully, you know, and everything? Now, I personally, when I get a contract that's been changed, I like to get one that's been pen and inked. So I can see right where the changes are, instead of saying, here's one that's been changed, you figure out what we changed. I'd rather have one that is marked up, actually. But as long as we can confirm that the contract has in fact been, you know, because of our lack of other options in some cases, has been appropriately and lawfully extended, and if in fact the changes they want to make in this change are okay with us, as long as we can do that, then we don't want to get to a point where we don't have a way to get rid of waste. We need to keep a contract in force with somebody.
Well, we're at a little bit of a disadvantage by the law director not being here tonight. Of course, we
Yeah.
understand why he's not. But we've got a motion to send this to the Solid Waste Committee, and we got a second by Commissioner Wandale. And, you made the motion, and then Commissioner Mead made the second.
Sure.
Okay. Any discussion on the motion? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes unanimous. Anything else to come before this committee? Any old business?
Mr. Chairman, I'd like for us to, I don't know if we can do it at some point. I would like for us to take the motions from the commission, and I know some of us will say, well, they're on the minutes. Well, they could be on the minutes all day for the rest of eternity. But the motions we make in this body, I want to see a list. So we as a body can go back and say, that motion was acted upon, or that motion was disposed of, or that motion never was acted upon. Because, I see many, many times we make motions never seem to get acted upon. So I don't know if we do it through the Rules Committee. I don't know how we do it properly, but I would like to have a new function set up within this body to where we, as a body, can go to our Anderson County webpage, and so can our citizens, to see motions made, actions taken, and it'll be something that all of us can point to say, this is what we've been working on, instead of getting up here, and a lot of people think we just argue, I guess, but I think that would give some tangible data points to our people to look at. So I don't know what the process is. I guess I can make a motion to send it to the Rules Committee to have them consider it. It might be out of line. I don't know. Commissioner Mead, I think, is the chairman of the Rules Committee. Maybe he can give some feedback, or we just run it through the operations.
Well,
We've
I
already,
mean, the county commission have not only followed Robert's rules to a great extent, that we've gone and said, in addition to the Robert's rules things, here are some things we're gonna do slightly differently. Okay, and that's all in place. One of the things I commented on recently that's almost the same thing, you'll have a meeting and there'll be all kinds of really important discussion. But if you didn't vote on it, technically it doesn't have to be included in the minutes at all. And so I've actually made some recommendations that we consider that relevant discussion during a meeting, to the extent that it's not, taking over the whole thing, but that if you have really important discussion during a meeting, that should be reflected in the minutes, even if it didn't end up in a vote. That's now my personal opinion, because Robert's rules doesn't say that. It just says you must include anything that was action in the minutes. But it doesn't say you can't add other things. That's true. And so I think that's just kind of a move in the same direction. When something happens at an official public meeting, the minutes need to reflect the actual event, not just only the items that were voted on. Because sometimes the discussion is pretty important.
we had discussion last week about tracking, resolutions. And we could do that with motions, like in a spreadsheet, because we spoke to Ned about that last week. But it's always good to be able to go, because you think, where'd that go?
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I make a motion that we establish a spreadsheet for motions made during the county commission regular meetings, and I so move.
Second.
Got a motion?
And that would be approved motions?
Annette?
I already do that. I just don't put it on the website.
Then I'll withdraw my motion and make a new motion. I make a motion that the spreadsheet for motions made during regular county commission meetings be provided to all county commissioners and citizens through the county website. I so move.
There you go. Second.
You got a motion and a second. Discussion on the motion?
And there's really nothing wrong with it. It's just, it's being clear and concise to not only the people at home, but allowing us to be able to look in one general area and go, all right, we've been working on this, or that's come to a close, and this is what the outcome was.
Commissioner Yeager?
That's exactly right, because the item that bothers me that has never been completed are the witness rooms.
Yeah.
Where'd that go?
Yeah.
And that would help me understand where it is in the world. So I think there's a lot of those things that
There is,
go
there
on.
is a
So
lot.
I think it'll be very helpful.
Yeah,
Commissioner Anderson?
I agree with all that. I think a big part, you hear a lot of talk about transparency in government, and part of that is clarity and being concise and having it where it's easy to understand. And you can say, oh, yeah, it's public record over in the jail cell in a tub buried or something. It's there, but, you know, so I think just having it more streamlined is a lot more accessible to more people than just having an information dump, you know.
I agree. All in favor?
Mr. Chairman, before we vote, I want to be clear, Annette does a great job keeping up with that already. She just does it instinctively herself, so I didn't want to imply that Annette's not been keeping up with anything, and I appreciate all she's done. I just wanted to say that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimous. Anything else? Seeing nothing, we'll call this meeting adjourned. Thank you.